All right, this section is called Photo Basics, and for probably 90% of you, just skip past this. Some people get angry when they get told information they already know about, in which case, you need to find new things to get angry about. Just move on to the next section, go on to camera controls. But for those of you who just don't mind a few minutes brushing up on the basics, let's go through a few of the basics here. So this is a single lens reflex camera, which means we have one lens on the camera. There are lots of choices on lenses, wide angle, telephoto, many more we don't have time to talk about right now. In the lens itself is an aperture, which allows us to control the amount of light coming through the lens. And so we can let in more light or less light by changing our f-stops or apertures and closing our aperture down like this to let in less light. And with each of these stops, the f-stops, it is either doubling or cutting in half the amount of light coming in the camera. Beyond controlling the amount of light coming in the camera, it also controls our depth of field, or how much is in focus. A 1.4 lens is going to exhibit very shallow depth of field when shot at 1.4. As we stop our apertures down, we're going to get more and more depth of field. The area that is in focus is going to increase. As you can see on this yardstick on the right, the numbers at the top and bottom are coming in sharper and sharper focus as we stop our aperture down to its smallest opening. Now we have great depth of field. So that's what's going on in the lens. Now when the light comes in, it hits the mirror, and that's the reflex portion. Reflex means there's a mirror in there bouncing the light upwards. It bounces the light upwards to a focusing screen, which you can see through the viewfinder via a prism system. And so that's what's happening when you pick the camera up just to look and compose your shots. When you press down on the shutter release, the mirror needs to get up and out of the way so that light can get back to the image sensor. Now, before light can get there, it needs to get past the shutter unit, which actually has two parts to it, the first and the second curtain. The first curtain is blocking, and then it moves away, lets the light into the sensor, and then the second unit comes in and turns and blocks the light, and that way each pixel is exposed for exactly the same amount of time. The mirror returns, the shutter returns to its beginning position, and there are many different shutter speeds used for controlling light. Once again, you can either let in more light with a longer shutter speed or less light with a faster shutter speed, but it also controls the action stopping capability of the camera. One of the most important things in any camera these days is the size of the sensor. And there are lots of different cameras out on the market, and there are lots of different size sensors, which has to do a great deal with the overall image quality, capabilities, the types of accessories that work with it. And the 5D Mark IV works with the largest of the common sensors out on the market, which is based off of 35mm film, which is what I like to call the Goldilocks size. It was not too big and not too small. It just fit right for a lot of people's needs in photography, and that's why it was so popular in the days of film, and it's been carried forward in the days of digital as well. And so this is what is known as a full frame, because it's the same size as film. Now there are smaller sensors, some of them in Canon cameras, like the Canon 7D Mark II uses an APS-C sensor, as many of the other lower cost Canon cameras. And there are different factors, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about the lenses that you can use on this camera. So if you want to know more about photography, I have a class called The Fundamentals of Photography. It's about 27 hours of visuals and lectures and going through everything. It's a little deceptive. I think the name is probably not the best name. It's Fundamentals. There's just so much more in there. It's not just the basics. It should be the fundamentals of photography and much more, or something like that, because as I said, we spend 5 days going over that information here at Creative Live, and so you can find that at Creative Live's website, of course.